Hello and welcome to the Business Pulse International channel. My name is Dominic Khalbebi. On this program, we'll be focusing on chambers, so all news that's related to chambers and the initiatives and activities that they're undertaking. Today, I've got a very special guest, Ms. Peggy Drodskie, who's the current Chief Operating Officer of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industries. So by way of a short introduction, Ms. Drodskie has been part of SACI for the past 27 years. When she started off, she was a secretary in the Transportation and Tourism, so looking after that division, and in just 3 short years, she was appointed the Director of Policy. Now, before SACI, she served in the steel and engineering industries of South Africa, where she ensured quality education and training for all the trainees and apprentices. And one of her great career highlights was that she was elected as the second woman in the world and the first in South Africa into the Institute of Motor Industries. So, Ms. Peggy Drodskie, welcome.
Thank you.
I think just to kick us off, I've heard about chambers, and for myself, I haven't been really clear. So could you provide a context for us? What is the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industries and the Chamber of Commerce movement? And really, what is your impact and input to businesses?
Well, to start off with, the Chamber of Commerce movement has got a history going back more than 400 years. It started off in France, in Marseille, and it has moved into being a global movement of businesses. And in South Africa, we go back to almost the time that Jan van Riebeeck landed at the Cape. The Cape Town Chamber, for instance, is over 200 years old. So the whole idea behind a chamber is that it will promote and look after the interests of businesses that become their members.
Yes. So who's the target audience exactly? So by businesses, are we talking small, medium, or are these blue chip corporations?
Well, I think the way to explain it best is to have a look at the membership structure of SACI. There is a very, very small number of large corporates that are members of ours, mainly multinationals, but those are the companies that would not normally be looking at local government.
Okay.
Then we have some industry associations that are members of ours that look at specific aspects that relate to the industry. For instance, the motor industry looks after motor industry issues. The mohair association looks after issues relating to mohair farming and the products that come from mohair. But the most important leg of SACI is in fact the Chambers of Commerce and Industry. We've got 55 of them, and they are located in the towns and country, cities across the country. Yes. But from them, the majority of our members come, and they are the small and medium-sized enterprises.
That are part of it.
That's
sure.
right.
So with your members, what's in it for them? Why is it in their best interest to be part of a chamber?
There are a number of reasons why. Firstly, it's not always possible for a small and medium-sized enterprise to become aware of what is happening within the business environment. They've got their own businesses to run, and the external issues that impact on their business are not always in the front of their minds. And the chamber keeps a watch on what is happening and actually goes to the front and says, this is what the problem is to local government, to national government, or to provincial government, and says, this is the impact that what you are doing has got on business. And businesses themselves don't have the time or the opportunity to do that. But also, many businesses don't want to go to government in their own right for fear that they might be prejudiced. And the chamber movement puts its nose over the parapet in order to look after the interests of chambers.
Yeah, no, certainly. So in the space in which you play, from what I'm hearing, you then impact on policies that make it more conducive for these small and medium enterprises to be able to operate.
Yes.
Okay, so I think to take you out of the serious mode, I see you're very focused. May you tell us a bit about your story and how you came to be appointed into SACI? Because I mean, 27 years, that's quite a while, to be applying yourself within an organization.
It is a while, and I think that the most important thing was I started off as a teacher. Didn't last very long because I found that every time a year came round, you had different faces in front of you, but you were giving them the same information.
Yes.
And I found that very boring. And then when the opportunity came to join the steel and engineering industries as what they called an education office, because I had the experience of teaching,
teacher, so
and
I
managed to get a position there which really changed the whole direction of what I was going to be taking, because that was organized business. It was looking after interests of organized business as far as a training majority of engineers in steel and engineering industry is concerned, and also
So in the spaces
technicians.
around apprenticeships, how exactly
Yes.
do they go under the training?
That is correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And then I moved to the Motor Industries Federation, where I was doing something very similar, but something very, very interesting, because in those days, the government of the time put together what they called the in-service training centres. And I was responsible for developing the courses of the in-service training centres for the motor industry. And I don't know whether it was questionable or not,
Yes.
the real opportunity of getting the first black motor mechanics indentured in the industry.
Yeah.
Because previously to that, the black operations were limited to the most thing that they could do was a lubrication bay attendant, which is grease
Yes.
sensing that they did on
Very
Saturday
basic.
mornings, very basic. And I thought that was quite an achievement.
Certainly. And I think to build on that, because you've been part of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industries for 27 years.
Yes.
So by any stretch of the imagination, especially within the South African context, you've been part of an organization that existed in the, during the apartheid period,
Yes.
and now is still going strong in now the democratic South Africa.
Yes.
So could you please just draw for me how it is that SECI was operating then versus how have you now morphed and molded yourself into this new economy that we have?
One of the things that we as an organisation are very proud of, although in the environment that there was at that time, it wasn't always possible for us, but we always had a constitution that was non-racial. And we really worked very hard to try and get the whole system changed, because we said that we have got so many people in South Africa who could actually contribute significantly to the South African economy, but they are being excluded.
Yes.
And so we did that, and we even made those sort of comments to the TRC. And of course it was taken with a lot of interest, and that has not changed at all. We still have that whole focus on what is good for business is good for South Africa. And it doesn't matter what organisation you are in, what sort of a company you are in, that if we can put in place an environment that is good for business, it's going to be good for South Africa.
Yes, no, certainly. During your period at SECI, what do you believe has been your contribution at the time that you've spent there?
I think one of the main contributions that I made, I can remember being down in Parliament at one of the particular portfolio committees, and one of the ANC members came over, and you have lunch or something to drink halfway through, and he handed me an empty champagne flute, and he said to me, "I want to give you this." And I thought, "Oh, what is he giving me this empty glass for?" And he said to me, "This is a tribute." He said, "Because your organisation under you have become not the voice of business, but rather the voice of reason in South Africa." And that to me was something which made me feel good, because at least what we were doing was something that was falling on ground and having an impact.
Yeah, certainly. So some of the rather negatives that's associated with chambers is that they typically can become old boys clubs. What's happening in that space around, really transforming it, really ensuring that anyone that's involved in business sees for themselves that there is an interest to be involved there and play and influence?
It's rather difficult for the organisation that I am with at the moment to bring about that comprehensive change, because every single chamber is totally autonomous. There is no mandatory membership of SECI, and we can't dictate to them. All we can do is to give them advice.
Yes, and direction.
And direction. And the ones that you are talking about now that have become typical old boys club, and we've had experiences where we've been told that they get together over a glass of wine after business hours, and that's it, and that's why it's become known as an old boys club.
Yes.
But that certainly is not what the objective of a Chamber of Commerce is. A Chamber of Commerce is worth much more. And so many people say, "Oh, but you're just networking and you just get together with each other and you network."
Yeah.
That also is not what it is about. Chambers are located in towns and cities across the country. They are located in the areas where business actually takes place. So it is really the Chamber's role to bring to the attention of the authorities who can make a difference what the issues are that are being faced by the particular companies that are operating within their areas. Yes, and it's not only to bring to the attention of those local authorities what is a downside, but also to congratulate them when they're doing something good, because that builds a good relationship. So it's very important that the good relationship exists.
Definitely. And I think sticking to that point, what do you believe, because currently in the South African economy, so we have, insofar as unemployment rate, I think that's now gone up around 28%. Speaking to the youth in particular, youth unemployment rate is currently at over 50% for black youth unemployment. So government has recognized that small and medium businesses contribute about 60% in employment opportunities and about half of the South African GDP and where it operates. So with that context, what do you believe is currently being done right and the things that can be improved within the South African economy?
Part of the problem that is being faced by the small business is the regulatory regime, and they're finding it very difficult to actually participate. And for this reason, what we had at our last annual convention, which was held in October last year, we put forward a proposal that what small business needed was a Bill of Rights. And in that Bill of Rights, we said they needed to have some relaxation of the very stringent labour laws, the laws that require them to adhere to various things such as the protection.
Because the labour laws do not discriminate whether you're a big multinational or a medium owner, you still need to go through the same process. And honour that.
Yes, and perhaps to relax some of the taxation laws for them, to give them some sort of benefit so that they can actually use the first couple of years that they are in existence to grow. And we've taken that particular Bill of Rights issue to the Department of Economic Development, and we've taken it to the DTI, we've taken it to the Department of Labour, and we've said to them, won't you please have a look at this and make sure that you understand what we are trying to get. We're not trying to make the small businesses companies that don't comply with the regulations. We just want you to assist them to reach a stage where they can become sustainable.
And they can breathe and they can grow. Certainly. So given that Bill of Rights and where the South African government is going regarding the regulations of small and medium businesses, does SACI align with current government policies and where the thinking is going forward?
Sometimes. But not always. And I don't think it's possible to align always with government.
Why do you say so?
What we have done is with the Department of Small Business Development, and that's one that I didn't mention just now, which we took it to first, we have got an MOU where we are looking at what they are planning and we are discussing with them what is required. And we found that having an MOU with a government department certainly does help.
Yes. And with that MOU, it's just around how do you best align given the vision that they're wanting to drive things.
Yes. We have never said that as an organisation and as far as policy is concerned that we object to what they are trying to achieve. But we have had differences on the way in which they hope to achieve it. And that goes for things like BEE as well. We believe that there are ways and means of achieving those various objectives that they've got, and they do not necessarily align with the way in which government sees it happening.
So it's a matter of you agree with where things should go, but how you get there can be entirely different. No, certainly. So given the current context of our economy, where do you believe chambers should be focusing their efforts, to build business growth going forward?
The chambers have got a very, very important role to play in terms of getting out to small businesses the opportunities that there are there. And when I said earlier that networking is not their particular forte, I do believe that what they can be doing is aligning big business with small business, because that's where a lot of the businesses can take place and take advantage. Small business should actually link into big business, and big business should link into small business, and wherever possible there should be opportunities that are provided.
Yeah, certainly. I think the other question that I have, so the chamber, does it only influence government, or do you also influence private corporation insofar as having, conditions that are conducive to enable the small businesses to grow?
It's not only government, it is also business to business operations. And even if it's medium-sized enterprises that are trying to interact with each other, very often you've got a medium-sized one that's sending out a tender, and perhaps that tender is very onerous for other people to do it. Yeah. So we say simplify your documentation, make it easier for partnerships to develop.
Certainly. No, that's great. And what do you believe, the tangible impacts that you've been able to have as a chamber? So if you were to look back, that these were the initiatives that you put in place, or this is the influence that you've been able to have that has tangibly impacted, businesses and them being able to grow and be sustainable?
Very difficult to actually quantify what that is, because obviously the statistics are not available, and also when you get a change in direction, you're never sure whether it is because it has been as a result of what we have been doing, or whether we have just been one in a group of people or group of organizations that have been calling for the same thing. Yeah. Because we believe that if there are more than one organizations that are calling for the same thing, the chances of success are greater. Now, when we look at Business Unity South Africa as an example, they have asked business not to send in comments when they have done comments, and we have consistently rejected that and said, if we say the same as you are saying, but we come from a different angle, and we focus on what small business is saying, but you focus on what business as a whole is saying, that impact is going to be greater. So where we have seen that there have been positive changes, for instance in the tax laws, there have been changes, and there have been moves to make it easier for small business to comply with tax requirements. We believe we've had a hand in it, but we're not sure whether we've been the only ones.
Yeah, no, certainly. So I believe that you'll be moving away from our shores in the next period of time, where you'll be relocating through to Australia. Really, what has informed that move, and will we be losing, your intellect and experience altogether, or will we still be able to benefit from some of what it is that you've been doing?
I think when you look at it and you're reaching the stage where you're going to retire, you have a look at what the opportunities are. I have got family there, I've got grandchildren in Australia, and obviously the family calls are quite strong.
Certainly.
The Australian Chamber have indicated that they might have something for me to do, but with the electronic communications these days, I've made a concerted decision that I will be keeping in contact with chambers here. It's been my life for so long. I've got some very, very good friends within the chamber movement. I hope that I have been able to influence what has been happening in South Africa positively, and I hope that I can still do that through the chamber movement.
Certainly. So I think just as a parting shot, so given the career that you've had and the view that you've been able to gain that is quite broad insofar as how business and chambers and government links, what advice do you have for small businesses which are really quite broad? Because we are talking businesses that go from survivalist through to guys that are really sitting in the 100 million, 200 million kind of turnover per annum. So why would it be in their best interest, to get involved in a chamber, to support a chamber? And then the second part of this question is around the chambers themselves. What do you believe they need to start really getting right in order to truly serve their members?
One of the things that some of the chambers are doing, which I have found very, very useful, and a reason why the small businesses should become affiliated to chambers, and apart from broadening their business contacts, which they get, is that chambers can offer a lot of advice to them. They have got experience, they know what has happened to other companies that have gone through similar problems and had to jump through similar hoops, and they can explain to ones that might be facing those sort of challenges for the first time what can be done. So advice is a very good aspect. Information. One of the areas that we find is that the small businesses get into a lot of trouble because they don't comply with legislation, because they don't know what they need to do. And part of that negative part is they don't know what they need to do, and if they don't do, then the penalties can be extremely punitive. So the chambers can then provide them with the information on the regulatory environment that they need to be aware of. If you don't register for VAT, for instance, it can be quite serious. If you don't comply with employment equity requirements, it can be quite serious. And the chambers can provide information on those areas that they need to be aware of when they are operating.
So it's just a small business.
That's right.
Yeah.
And also the chambers have got a lot of contacts themselves with networks. So if you've got a small business operating in Randburg, for instance, and they want to gain some traction in another part of the country, let's make it quite close. Let's say they want to go to Ekurhuleni.
Sure.
There are chambers in Ekurhuleni. They can work together and they can say, I've got this business, he wants this, he knows he can get it in Ekurhuleni. Have you got one of your members that can provide this person's requirements?
Certainly.
Yeah.
So with that, Peggy, I think thank you very much for the short period of time you've been able to afford us. But I believe there's a lot that we got in there that really people can, extrapolate from, be able to look into to benefit themselves. I think to anyone that's watching this program, I mean, we used to live in a time where they said what you don't know can't hurt. And we know now that what you don't know could actually kill you in the kinds of times that we're living in. So if you are an entrepreneur, small business owner, it's really up to your best interest to ensure that you research, you get into the chambers, get the information that you need so that as you grow as a business, you can become more sustainable and really don't fall short because of things that you did not know. So with that, we say thank you very much and join us next time on the Chambers program here on Business Pulse International.